Welcome to the Strategic Insights Podcast. I'm your moderator, Andrew Makl. Today we have a hot topic segment, more topics we're hearing more and more about and being asked about at user groups all around the country. Today's topic is going to be cloud conversions. And with me today to go over that topic is Tim Rabaut. He's our Senior Vice President of Customer Engagement. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to be here.
Well, Tim, somebody might not understand what Senior Vice President of Customer Engagement is. Can you give us a little background on yourself and what that title implies and what you do at Strategic?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Actually, we just formed this department a couple of years ago and rebranded ourselves to be more aligned with the client. And it's customer engagement because my team really owns that entire software journey with the client. From the time that we have that first discussion about potentially buying, right, all the way to the end where we've completed a project. My team stays engaged really end to end. And we built that out of, for one thing, I come from services. So I have a lot of appreciation for how deployments take place. My entire team does really about how are you going to deploy that software. And that's really important. So my team really sits between sales, as you know, you're a big part of that sales team, and the services team. So we have solution architects, we have business solution executives that paint that vision for the client, do software demos, really create that journey or that roadmap for them so that we can get on that journey together.
Speaking of journeys, I think it's a good segue. The journey we're going to talk about today is the cloud conversion. So what's the first step in that cloud conversion? What's the intro conversation or what's the first step in making that process happen?
Yeah, I use the term assessment because it really drives everything that we do. We were just talking about deployment methodology, and it's the same answer, right? It comes back to that initial assessment, and the assessment really defines where the client is today, right? Those business challenges that they have, pain points that they might have, all those things about where they are, and then where do you want to go, right? And that assessment is really the driver for that. It creates a look at your current state, how am I doing today, where do I want to go, and matches that up with the recommendation that really comes from that assessment.
So I imagine those assessments can really vary because we're talking about QAD cloud conversion. So a person could be on a version from 2019, 2020, where there's a lot of state that you know about. Business might not have changed that much. We're not changing business process. And there might be clients on versions from like 1996, EB2.
Yeah,
and there's a lot more to unravel there. There's a lot more nests and problems that we're going to run into.
Right.
When someone's looking at that, is there any area that's more concerning, or is it the same process? It's still an assessment. It's still, you have to break it down to this core. What are you doing with your historical data? Where do you want to go in the future?
Right.
Is it just more labor intensive? Or I just want to make sure that when someone says, well, I don't need an assessment, I'm on 2020. Is that really true? Or it should be like, I think you always need to reevaluate where you're going in the future?
No, I think that's right. Everything really does need an assessment. It could be a simple Teams meeting with two stakeholders at the client site. Maybe they're on a version that's not that old. They don't have a lot of customizations. They're trying to stay current on the software. We're still assessing where they are and determining where they need to go every step of the way, right?
Right.
I think another thing to add to that topic is, part of that journey with the client are those customer engagement meetings that we have that set those roadmaps, right, for 3, 5, even 10 years. We review that with the client, right? At least once a year, sometimes twice a year, depending on the activity that's happening, right? So those assessments can help drive that, right? That's just another assessment, but it's another view on how you can look at where the client is and where they need to go, and we're continuously talking about that with them.
So keeping them educated and agreeing on buy-in on where they're going so that everything aligns. They're not falling behind on their journey, if you will.
Right,
so,
exactly.
So on that assessment, what's this next step in that assessment? What's the path forward, if you will?
Yeah, for determining what a cloud conversion or
so if you're going to do a cloud conversion, I'm assuming it's the deliverable of the assessment is going to be the next step in the path forward in regards to understanding, if it's going to be a realignment or if it's going to be a data conversion.
Right.
And then you're off to the races on discussing, what's the future look like?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes assessments lead to more assessments, right? So back to the complexity question of where the client is today, where they want to go to. How large is the client, right? Sometimes that initial assessment, one of the recommendations would be, we need to do a deep dive. We need to go see the 5 plants, see the complexity, talk to the key stakeholders, talk to the business owners, understand the requirements at a deeper level so that we can really understand how we bring them forward. I think those clients that are more complex, and we've seen a lot of those over the years, that really demands a deeper level assessment. And typically what you'll find is those clients that have been on the system for a very long time, the business has evolved, right? And the software doesn't match up with their business as it stands today. So that's really key, right? So if you go into an upgrade project and you assume, well, I'm going to convert all the data, I'm going to bring it over, and you don't understand the business drivers, the pain points in the organization, you might be setting themselves up for the same problems they have just on a newer version of the software.
You're just bringing your problems forward.
You're just bringing your problems forward. You're converting them into the new environment. So it's actually a really good time for clients to sit down, look at their business processes, understand what's working, what's not working. And what we found typically is that those clients will lean towards a business realignment. So we don't just convert the data, bring it over. We spend the time, we look at master data, we look at things like customers, suppliers, items, work centers on the manufacturing floor, right? How should we set up the business to better align, right, with the software for where you want to go and where you are today, right? That's a really key point.
From my experience, and I'll let you chime in because you cover obviously a lot more in the country than just the clients I help support. Money spent in that area of assessments and digging in deeper to maybe it's, question the processes and seeing if your shop floor is aligned correctly or question your quality and verifying will it match your go forward program. I have yet to see anybody that delayed and spent a little more money on the assessments or spent a little more money and time internally looking over, are we doing it correctly? And does this match where we want to go? Mad about it in the future. It's everybody that's, I need to have it done by a certain time. Usually we're going back and, tweaking a couple of processes in the future. But when people look at this, we just got to make sure that planning phase is critical. And if someone wants to speed through that process, it's only adding risk. But as we take all that lovely information in, and the client gets to the point where they're ready to move forward and they've done their due diligence, the question comes down to, in a cloud conversion, is it 2024 or is it 03? And when a customer comes to you, how do you approach that, or what's our guidance to customers when they start asking questions surrounding that?
Yeah, it's a great point. And again, that's part of that roadmap discussion, right? I think the only thing that's known for certain is that doing nothing is not an option, right? And why do I say that? Well, no matter where you are today, the end state needs to be QAD ERP 03, right? That's a big leap forward in technology and infrastructure and just how QAD is running, right, as a software company. And it's really a movement to public cloud and software as a service, right? And there's been a lot of talk in the industry about that. Most modern ERPs now are moving into that environment. So that's really where you want to go, right? So if you're a QAD client, you're running on QAD, you're obviously invested in it. To ignore that end state would just be setting yourself up, right, for failure or for potentially, more costly upgrades. So again, 03 is the end state. Now, I can't just go to 03. And why is that? Well, because 03, because of its structure around software as a service and the way that it's set up, there's really no more old school customizations and old school configurations and complex integrations, and that's actually a good thing, right?
Right.
And if you look at those environments, they facilitate, updates a couple times a year, and it's not a big deal, right? Do you have to test? Obviously, you need to test, but if you think about where we've come from, and we being our customers, our clients on QAD, every upgrade is a project, right? It marshals a lot of resources, it marshals a lot of investment. Well, getting to 03 significantly reduces that because the software code base, not trying to get too technical, right? But the software itself is maintained and it's not modified. So changes that are made are deployed to all clients within that environment, right? It's not that you don't have to think about the impacts, but prior to that, you've had customizations, complex integrations. There's a lot of time spent trying to figure that out. where if you move into these modern ERP SaaS platforms, you don't have those challenges anymore.
Nor the cost, the risk, right?
Yeah, nor the cost.
So if you're doing 4
right.
4 years in between upgrades, it's a complete project, like you said. It's a huge undertaking. It's doubling up on your staff's time.
Right.
The methodology behind why they're doing it completely changes, but at the same time, managing small changes is a lot easier than managing a very large change every few years, let alone the cost impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think everybody would say that, we've been through them. I did, and that's how I got in this industry, right? I did upgrades and did implementation. So did you.
Yeah.
To tell me I could only do 20 to 30 hours worth of testing possibly in a given quarter, rather than doing a 100-day project, I think I would definitely take the testing, because I wouldn't have to figure out who's going to backfill half my team.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So obviously you talked about 2024 briefly there. Sounds like that's the stopgap for people that need time to figure out and flush out, like you talked about, those assessments and what those assessments came back in plans for customizations or third-party products.
Right. Yeah. So we talked about 03. That's where we need to go. Well, how do we get there? So QAD ERP 2024, right? What I call private cloud is the current state that all of our clients are in with QAD. That's really considered private cloud, not public. It's not software as a service, as we know, right? So that environment is where we are directing customers to if you have a lot of customizations, a lot of configurations, a lot of complex integrations that when you look at 03 won't port over directly, right? So that's really the biggest challenge for our clients, in understanding the level of customization that you have in your environment and the fact that that won't move forward. So what QAD has done is actually very smart, is in that in the private cloud version, they have what are called extensions. And those extensions are very powerful. And effectively, they're replacing traditional customizations, right? Where you go in and you write code and everybody's programming all day long. This is really no code, low code, right? But that, again, is another buzzword in the industry, but it makes a lot of sense, because when you're talking about standardization, if I have customization and it's complex, then I have to have programmers that understand that business logic, right?
Right.
So inside of 2024, AERP Private Cloud are the extension capabilities. That same capability exists in 03. So talking about that stepping stone, when we're working with a client that is moving to 2024, we look at those customizations. We're going to rewrite those into those standard extensions as much as we can, right? So that's why you talked about it as a stopping ground or a middleware, or middle place to getting to 03. That's exactly right. Now, is everything going to be able to be replaced? It might not, and we can leave that for the next phase when we move to 03. But the goal inside of that environment is to get ready for that eventual leap into 03 and replace as many of those old school customizations and complex integrations that you have, replace them with standard extensions, standard integration touch points, and then you'll be set up, and the migration to 03 will be much easier.
So it effectively is, we're just shortening and making it as painless as possible by using 2024 and removing all of the things they've put together, which I think is critical, right? Because a lot of times in all projects we do, the hang up is generally going over the customizations.
Right.
And as we look at most everything moving to a SaaS product moving forward, it's going to be that extension layer. It's going to be APIs. It's going to be able to not have to worry about your base code of your ERP anymore, and more plug and play when you need certain solutions or extensions for certain solutions. And then, like you said, the risk goes down. Always be on the latest, greatest version. Your support goes up, because think about it. The company that's supporting you, everybody knows that version, right? So you're not looking for somebody that understands 1996 code.
Yeah.
And as much as we all want to be like, oh, it worked well in the past, well, there's a reason. There's a reason why everybody's going that direction. So, I want to wrap with, we've got your team is a very large team of solution architects that are there to support customers and to understand and do these assessments and help them plan for the future. That's our goal as a company, is to help our customers be successful. So as they're looking at a cloud conversion, please reach out to strategic.com so we can talk to you about your options. And of course, what assessments you may or may not need. But Tim, as always, thank you for taking the time today to talk to everybody. And we look forward to following up on this in the future when we have a couple success stories on people that are making that move to 2024.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.